The crash landing. It was a quiet night in the small village of Rockwood. The sky was clear, stars twinkled like tiny diamonds, and the air carried the faint smell of rain. Danny, a young mechanic, was finishing his late-night tea on the porch of his tiny workshop. Life in Rockwood was simple and uneventful. The most exciting thing to happen in months was when old Mr. Gregg's tractor broke down. But that night was different. Danny noticed a strange light streaking across the sky. It wasn't like any shooting star he had seen before. The light burned bright and colorful, leaving a glowing trail that made the night sky look like a painting. Suddenly, the light turned sharply, heading straight toward the woods near the village. Moments later, the ground shook as a thunderous explosion echoed through the air. Birds flew from the trees, and dogs barked in fear. What the hell was that? Danny muttered, standing up. His heart pounded with excitement and curiosity. Grabbing a flashlight, he decided to investigate. The woods weren't far, and he couldn't ignore the pull of adventure. He told himself it was probably a meteor or some space junk falling from the sky. But deep down, he hoped it was something more. As Danny entered the woods, he felt the crunch of dry leaves under his boots. The air smelled strange, like burnt metal mixed with ozone. The deeper he went, the brighter the glow became. He could hear a faint humming sound, almost like a heartbeat. It was eerie but mesmerizing. Finally, Danny reached the source of the crash. His breath caught in his throat. A massive crater had formed in the ground, its edges glowing faintly. At the center lay a strange metallic object, smooth, sleek, and unlike anything he had ever seen. It was a ship, but not the kind humans built. It looked alive, with veins of golden light pulsing across its surface. Danny hesitated, his hands trembling as he pointed the flashlight toward the ship. Suddenly, the door of the ship hissed open, releasing a puff of steam. He jumped back, heart racing. A tall figure emerged, stumbling and barely able to stand. It was a woman, or at least she looked like one. But she was unlike any human Danny had ever seen. She was at least 9 feet tall, her skin a soft silver with a faint shimmer. Her long hair flowed like liquid gold, glowing faintly in the darkness. Her eyes, glowing like twin suns, locked onto Danny. She was breathtaking and terrifying all at once. Danny froze. His mind screamed at him to run, but his legs wouldn't move. The woman took a shaky step toward him before collapsing to her knees. "Stay back," she whispered, her voice soft but commanding. It sounded like music and thunder combined. She clutched her side, where golden liquid oozed from a deep wound. It wasn't blood. It was too bright, too alien. Danny's instincts kicked in. "You're hurt," he said, stepping forward cautiously. "Let me help you." Her head snapped up, and her glowing eyes burned with intensity. "No, don't touch me," she said, her voice trembling. "My body, it is not safe for you." Danny hesitated. "If I don't help you, you'll die." She looked at him for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether to trust him. Finally, she collapsed completely, her body hitting the ground with a dull thud. Danny didn't wait any longer. Ignoring her warning, he approached her and crouched down. Up close, she was even more incredible. Her skin felt warm, almost like sunlight, and her breathing was shallow. He pulled out a cloth from his pocket and pressed it against her wound, trying to stop the bleeding. As he worked, her eyes fluttered open. "Why are you doing this?" she asked weakly. "You don't even know me." Danny chuckled nervously. "Guess I'm just a guy who can't leave someone in trouble, even if they're, not from around here." She gave a faint smile, but it quickly faded. "You don't understand. Helping me could get you killed." Before Danny could respond, the ground trembled again. A strange sound filled the air, like a high-pitched screech mixed with grinding metal. He looked up and saw lights in the sky, similar to the one that brought her here. "What is that?" he asked, his voice shaking. Her glowing eyes widened with fear. "They're here," she whispered. "They're hunting me." Danny's heart raced. Who's hunting you? What's going on? But she didn't answer. Her strength faded, and she passed out completely. Danny stood there, torn between fear and determination. He didn't know who or what was coming, but he knew one thing. He couldn't leave her here. Grabbing her arm, he tried to lift her. She was surprisingly light for someone so tall, but still heavier than anything he was used to. "Come on," he grunted, dragging her toward the trees. "We've gotta hide." The humming sound grew louder, and the lights in the sky descended rapidly. Danny's mind raced with questions, but there was no time for answers. Whoever was coming, they weren't here for a friendly visit. As he dragged the alien woman into the shadows of the forest, Danny couldn't shake the feeling that his quiet life in Rockwood was about to change forever. A dangerous gamble. Danny's breath came in sharp gasps as he dragged the unconscious alien woman deeper into the forest. Every muscle in his body screamed in protest, but he didn't stop. The strange, rhythmic hum from above grew louder, vibrating the very air around him. He could see the glowing lights of another ship descending through the treetops. Whoever they were, they weren't coming for a peaceful chat. Finally, Danny found a small hollow under a fallen tree, its roots twisting like protective arms over a shallow pit. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. He carefully laid her down, her silvery skin shimmering faintly even in the dim light. "All right," he muttered to himself, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Stay here. Don't die. And maybe don't explode or whatever aliens do when they're mad." As he stood up, a sharp pain shot through his arm. He looked down to see it hanging at an odd angle. The adrenaline had masked it until now, but the reality hit him like a freight train. His arm was broken. Badly. Danny gritted his teeth, trying not to panic. He had fixed plenty of machines, patched up farm equipment, even welded a tractor engine back together. But this was different. This was him. He glanced at the alien woman, unconscious and glowing faintly, and shook his head. Great, just great. The humming sound snapped him back to reality. It was closer now, almost overhead. Danny crouched low, peering through the tangled roots. The ship descended slowly, its surface sleek and black, absorbing the moonlight. It was smaller than the first ship, but no less intimidating. Strange symbols glowed faintly along its hull, pulsing like a heartbeat. The ship landed with a soft thud, and the hum ceased. For a moment, there was silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Then, with a sharp hiss, the ship's doors slid open, and figures stepped out. They were tall and armored, their bodies covered in dark, reflective suits that seemed to ripple like liquid. Their faces were hidden behind helmets, but their movements were precise and predatory. Each carried a strange weapon that hummed softly, its tip glowing with a dangerous light. Danny's heart pounded in his chest. He had no idea who these aliens were, but they weren't here for a picnic. He glanced back at the unconscious woman. "They're hunting her," she had said. And now, they were here. The lead hunter raised a device, scanning the area. A sharp, beeping sound filled the air, and the hunter turned its head sharply in Danny's direction. His stomach dropped. "They found us." Without thinking, Danny grabbed a rock from the ground and hurled it into the bushes to his right. The sound of rustling leaves drew the hunter's attention, and they moved toward it in formation. Danny took the chance to slip out of the hollow, crouching low and keeping to the shadows. His broken arm throbbed with every movement, but he couldn't stop now. He needed a plan. "Think, Danny. Think." He spotted a cluster of fallen branches nearby, and an idea sparked. It was risky, but he didn't have a choice. He quickly arranged the branches in a pile, creating a crude trap. Using his good arm, he pulled out his lighter and set the branches ablaze. The fire crackled to life, sending smoke curling into the sky. The hunters immediately turned toward the light, their weapons raised. Danny used the distraction to circle back to the hollow. The alien woman was still there, motionless but breathing. Her wound glowed faintly, the golden liquid slowing but not stopping. He didn't know how long she had, but he knew he couldn't carry her much farther, not with his arm in this condition. As he knelt beside her, her eyes fluttered open. For a moment, she looked at him as if she didn't recognize him. Then her gaze softened, and she whispered, "Why are you still here?" Danny smirked, trying to hide his fear. "Because I don't know how to leave a problem half-fixed." Her glowing eyes studied him, filled with an emotion he couldn't place. "You're hurt," she said, her voice weak but concerned. "Yeah, well, I don't exactly have time to worry about that right now," Danny replied. "Those guys are looking for you, and they're not exactly friendly." She tried to sit up, but her body betrayed her. "You should leave. They won't stop until they have me." Danny shook his head. "Not happening. Now, can you walk? Or at least float or do some alien magic thing to make this easier?" A faint smile tugged at her lips. "I am not a magician." "Could have fooled me," Danny muttered. He glanced toward the direction of the fire. The hunters were still investigating, but it wouldn't hold them for long. He needed a better plan. Then, without warning, the woman raised her hand and placed it on his broken arm. A sharp, burning pain shot through him, and he gasped, biting back a scream. Her eyes glowed brighter, and for a moment, the pain faded. When she removed her hand, Danny stared in shock. His arm was still bruised and swollen, but the bone felt whole. How did you do that?" he asked, his voice trembling. She leaned back, her strength fading again. "A small gift," she said. "You'll need it for what's coming." Before Danny could respond, a loud crack echoed through the forest. The hunters were coming. Danny clenched his newly healed arm into a fist, determination hardening his gaze. "All right," he said, standing up. "Let's see what these guys are made of." The hunters arrive. The forest was unnervingly quiet, as if even the animals knew something terrible was coming. Danny crouched behind a fallen tree, his heart pounding so loudly he was sure the alien hunters could hear it. Beside him, the alien woman, the goddess, as he had begun calling her in his mind, was barely holding on. Her silvery skin was duller now, her glowing golden blood seeping through makeshift bandages he had fashioned from his shirt. Danny whispered, "I don't suppose you have a plan, do you? Something like a magic escape button." She opened her glowing eyes just slightly, her voice faint but sharp. "Survive. That is the plan." Danny let out a dry laugh. "Wow. Thanks for the inspirational speech." The distant hum of the hunters' scanning devices was growing louder. Danny peeked over the tree and saw them moving through the woods like shadows, their sleek black suits blending into the darkness. They carried strange, rifle-like weapons that hummed faintly, and their movements were too precise to be human. These weren't amateurs. They were predators. One of the hunters raised a glowing device that emitted a series of rapid beats. Danny's stomach dropped. They were close, too close. He needed to think fast. His mind raced through every movie, book, and wild campfire story he had ever heard about survival. His eyes landed on a patch of thick vines dangling from a nearby tree. An idea sparked. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. Turning to the goddess, he whispered, "Stay here. Don't move. And maybe don't explode or whatever it is you aliens do when you're in danger." She gave him a faint, almost amused smile. "You're a strange one, human." "Yeah, I get that a lot," Danny muttered before creeping away. Danny worked quickly, his hands trembling as he tied the vines into a crude snare. He had never done anything like this before, but desperation was a great motivator. He set the trap near a cluster of bushes, using a few glowing fragments from the goddess's damaged chip as bait. Their soft light would catch the hunter's attention, and if Danny was lucky, they'd walk right into his trap. Just as he finished, the hum of a scanner grew deafeningly loud. Danny ducked into the shadows, holding his breath. One of the hunters appeared, its dark armor gleaming faintly in the moonlight. It moved with eerie silence, its weapons scanning the area. The hunter's helmet turned toward the glowing fragments, and it stepped closer. Danny held his breath, his heart threatening to burst out of his chest. Come on, just a little closer. The hunter reached for the glowing fragments, and the vine snare snapped tight around its legs. With a mechanical screech, the hunter was yanked off its feet, crashing to the ground. Its weapon clattered away, and it thrashed wildly, trying to break free. Danny didn't wait to see if it would succeed. He grabbed a thick branch and swung it with all his strength, smashing it into the hunter's helmet. The impact sent vibrations up his arms, but the hunter barely flinched. Its helmet turned toward him, the black visor gleaming like a void. "Oh crap," Danny muttered, realizing his mistake. The hunter raised an arm, and a blade slid out of its gauntlet, glowing with an unnatural blue energy. Danny stumbled back, tripping over a root as the hunter slashed at him. The blade missed by inches, carving a glowing scar into the ground. "Okay, new plan," Danny shouted, scrambling to his feet. Before the hunter could strike again, a blinding light filled the clearing. Danny shielded his eyes as a golden energy blast shot past him, slamming into the hunter and sending it flying into a tree. The hunter slumped to the ground, motionless. Danny turned to see the goddess standing unsteadily, her hand glowing with faint golden energy. Her eyes were blazing, and for a moment, she looked like a true goddess, powerful and untouchable. "I thought I told you to stay down," Danny said, his voice a mix of relief and frustration. "And I thought humans were supposed to run from danger," she replied, her voice tinged with dry humor. "Fair point," Danny admitted, helping her stay upright. "But I don't think that's the last of them." As if on cue, a low, mechanical growl echoed through the forest. Danny turned to see two more hunters emerging from the shadows, their weapons glowing ominously. The goddess swayed on her feet, her energy clearly depleted. "I can't fight them like this," she said, her voice strained. Danny tightened his grip on the branch in his hand. It was a pathetic weapon, but it was all he had. "Then I guess it's up to me." The goddess looked at him, her glowing eyes softening. "You're either very brave or very foolish." "Probably both," Danny said, stepping in front of her. His heart pounded, and every instinct screamed at him to run. But something inside him refused to back down. He had no idea why he was risking his life for this alien woman, but he couldn't stop himself. The hunters raised their weapons, the glowing tips aimed directly at him. Danny braced himself, gripping the branch tightly. He didn't know how he was going to survive this, but one thing was clear: he wasn't going down without a fight. The Alliance. The air smelled of ozone and burning wood, and the forest was alive with danger. Danny stood frozen, gripping the jagged piece of tree branch in his hands. In front of him, the hunters advanced, their black, liquid-like armor reflecting the flickering flames of the trap he had set. Behind him, the alien goddess leaned heavily against a tree, her silvery skin dull, and her glow dimming. She could barely stand, let alone fight. "This is a terrible idea," Danny muttered under his breath, his knuckles white around the branch. The lead hunter raised its weapon, a sleek, glowing rifle that hummed with deadly energy. It aimed directly at Danny's chest. He swallowed hard. "All right, buddy," he said, forcing a shaky smile. "Let's talk about this. I'm sure we can come to some kind of." The hunter fired. Time seemed to slow as Danny's body reacted on instinct. He dove to the side, the energy blast searing the air where he had just been. The heat singed his arm, and he let out a yelp of pain. The second hunter moved in, its weapon charging with a high-pitched whine. Before it could fire, a golden flash lit up the clearing. The goddess raised her trembling hand, her palm glowing faintly. A beam of golden energy shot out, striking the second hunter's weapon and shattering it into pieces. The force of the blast sent the hunter stumbling back, but it quickly regained its footing, turning its attention to her. Danny scrambled to his feet, his heart pounding. "Hey, over here," he shouted, waving his arms. "Come on, you tin cans. I'm the one you want." The hunters hesitated for a moment, their dark visors turning toward him. Danny didn't wait for them to decide. He grabbed a handful of dirt from the ground and hurled it at the lead hunter's visor. It wasn't much, but it was enough to distract it for a split second. "Move!" Danny yelled at the goddess, grabbing her arm and pulling her away from the tree. She stumbled but managed to keep up as they ran deeper into the forest. The hunters gave chase, their heavy footsteps thundering behind them. Danny's lungs burned, and his legs screamed in protest. But he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. "Do you have a plan?" the goddess asked weakly, her voice barely audible over the sound of their pursuers. "Plan?" Danny gasped. "Yeah, sure. Step 1. Don't die. Step 2. Keep running. Step 3. Figure out step 3 later." She actually chuckled, a faint, musical sound that caught Danny off guard. "Humans are reckless." "Glad you noticed," he said, dodging a low-hanging branch. "Any chance you've got some alien superpower you're not telling me about?" Her smile faded. "I used too much energy. I cannot fight them. Not like this." Danny gritted his teeth. "Well, that's just perfect." They burst into a small clearing, the moonlight spilling onto the grass like silver paint. Danny looked around desperately, searching for anything that could help. His eyes landed on a massive fallen tree lying across the clearing, its roots sticking up like a fortress wall. "Over there," he said, dragging her toward it. They ducked behind the roots just as another energy blast tore through the air, scorching the ground where they had stood seconds before. Danny pressed his back against the roots, his chest heaving as he tried to catch his breath. The hunters were closing in, their glowing visors cutting through the shadows. "This isn't going to work," the goddess said, her voice barely a whisper. "They are too strong." Danny turned to her, his jaw set. "Then we make it work. You're not dying here. Not on my watch." Her glowing eyes searched his face, and for the first time, there was no defiance in her gaze, only a quiet acceptance. "Why do you care?" she asked softly. "Why would you risk your life for me?" Danny hesitated, unsure how to answer. Finally, he said, "Because you're not just some random alien. You're you. And for some crazy reason, I feel like you matter. More than I understand." Her expression softened, and she nodded. "Then I will fight. For you." Danny blinked. "Wait, what? I thought you said you couldn't." Before he could finish, she reached out and placed her hand on his chest. A warm, golden light spread from her palm, wrapping around him like a cocoon. Danny felt a surge of energy rush through him, filling him with strength and clarity. His broken arm, still bruised from their earlier encounter, suddenly felt whole. "What did you do?" he asked, staring at his hands in awe. "I gave you what little I have left," she said, her voice faint. "Use it wisely." Danny clenched his fists, feeling the newfound power coursing through him. He didn't know what he was capable of now, but he was about to find out. The sound of footsteps broke through his thoughts. The hunters had found them. Danny stood, the makeshift weapon still in his hand, and stepped out from behind the roots. "All right," he said, his voice steady. "Let's finish this." The hidden strength. Danny stood frozen in the moonlit clearing, his hands trembling as he stared down at the strange device the goddess had pressed into his palm moments before. It pulsed faintly, its alien symbols glowing gold and white, as if alive. His heart raced, but not from fear. It was something else. He could feel energy thrumming in his veins, something foreign yet strangely familiar. "You've got to be kidding me," Danny muttered, staring at the goddess, who now slumped against a tree, barely able to stay conscious. "You put this thing inside me. What even is it?" The alien woman's glowing eyes flickered open, her voice barely audible. "A fragment of our essence, a gift, or a curse." She coughed, her silvery skin dulling further. "You'll need it to fight them. It will protect you." Danny opened his mouth to argue, to tell her he wasn't a soldier or some kind of alien warrior. But before he could speak, the ground shook violently beneath his feet. A low, mechanical growl filled the air, and Danny turned just in time to see the hunters emerging from the shadows. There were 3 of them now, their black, liquid-like armor glinting ominously in the moonlight. They moved with predatory precision, their weapons raised and glowing with lethal energy. The leader pointed at Danny, its voice cold and metallic. "Surrender the fugitive, human," it said in a language that somehow translated directly in his mind. "Your resistance is futile." Danny took a shaky step back, gripping the branch in his hand. He knew it was useless against their advanced weapons, but he wasn't about to back down. Not now. Not after everything. "Yeah, well," Danny said, forcing a smirk. "Futile is kind of my middle name." The hunters didn't reply. Instead, they raised their weapons in unison, their glowing barrels aimed directly at him. Danny braced himself, expecting to feel the searing heat of an energy blast tearing through him. But instead, something extraordinary happened. As the hunters fired, the device in Danny's hand flared to life. A shield of golden light erupted around him, absorbing the blasts like ripples in water. Danny stumbled back, his eyes wide in shock. "What the?" he whispered, staring at his hands. The device pulsed again, and he felt the energy inside him surge. His body moved on its own, faster and stronger than he thought possible. The first hunter charged, its blade glowing with blue energy. Danny ducked under its swing, the movement almost effortless, and slammed the branch into its midsection. To his surprise, the impact sent the hunter flying backward, crashing into a tree with a metallic groan. "Okay," Danny muttered, staring at the branch in his hand. "This is new." The second hunter lunged at him, its weapon crackling with energy. Danny sidestepped the attack, grabbing the hunter's arm and twisting it with more strength than he thought he had. The hunter's weapon fell to the ground, and Danny didn't hesitate. He drove his knee into its chest, sending it sprawling. The third hunter hesitated, clearly recalculating its approach. Danny could feel its cold, calculating gaze behind the visor, analyzing him like prey that had suddenly grown fangs. "Yeah, I'd be scared too," Danny said, surprising himself with his newfound confidence. Before the hunter could make a move, the goddess called out weakly from behind him, "Danny, behind you." He spun around just in time to see the first hunter, now recovered, raising its weapon for another shot. Without thinking, Danny raised his hand, and a pulse of golden energy shot out from his palm. The blast struck the hunter square in the chest, sending it flying backward in a shower of sparks. Danny stared at his hand, his heart racing. "Okay," he said, more to himself than anyone else. "This is definitely not normal." The third hunter decided it had seen enough. It stepped back, raising a small device that emitted a sharp, high-pitched signal. Danny winced, covering his ears as the sound echoed through the clearing. Moments later, the hunter's ship appeared overhead, its lights sweeping the forest. "Danny," the goddess shouted, her voice stronger now. "The signal. It's calling reinforcements. You must stop it." Danny's eyes darted to the hunter, who was already stepping onto a platform that began to lift it toward the hovering ship. He didn't think. He just moved. With a burst of speed, Danny sprinted toward the hunter, leaping into the air with more power than he thought possible. He tackled the hunter off the platform, the two of them crashing to the ground in a tangle of limbs. The device it had been holding skidded across the clearing, its high-pitched signal still ringing out. The hunter recovered quickly, raising its blade to strike. But Danny was faster. He grabbed the blade with his bare hand, the golden energy protecting him from its searing heat, and twisted it out of the hunter's grip. With a final surge of strength, he drove the blade into the hunter's chest, piercing its armor. The hunter fell limp, its body sparking and hissing. Danny staggered to his feet, breathing hard. The device was still emitting its signal, and the ship above was beginning to descend. He grabbed the device and, with all his might, hurled it into the trees. Moments later, it exploded in a brilliant flash of light, cutting off the signal. The ship hesitated, its lights flickering, before retreating into the night sky. Danny collapsed to his knees, the golden energy inside him fading. He turned to the goddess, who was now standing shakily, her glowing eyes filled with something he hadn't seen before. Pride. "You fought like one of us," she said softly. Danny chuckled, wiping sweat from his brow. "Yeah, well, I'm still just a guy with a broken arm. Or, I guess, was a guy with a broken arm." She smiled faintly. "The fight is far from over. But tonight, you proved yourself." Danny looked at her, then at the stars where the ship had disappeared. He had no idea what he had gotten himself into, but one thing was clear: his life would never be the same. The revelation. The forest was quiet again, but it wasn't the peaceful kind of quiet Danny remembered from his nights in Rockwood. This silence was heavy, eerie, like the earth itself was holding its breath. He sat on a fallen log, his body aching from the fight with the hunters. His hands still trembled from the golden energy that had surged through him earlier. The alien device embedded in his palm pulsed faintly, its glow dim but persistent. Across from him, the goddess leaned against a tree, her glowing eyes fixed on the stars. Her silvery skin was dull, her golden blood streaked across her arms and legs. Yet even in her weakened state, there was something unshakable about her presence. She was otherworldly in every sense of the word. "You need answers," she said suddenly, breaking the silence. Her voice was soft, but carried a weight that made Danny sit up straight. "No kidding," Danny replied, rubbing the back of his neck. "I've been chased by alien bounty hunters, almost killed about 5 times, and now I've got whatever this thing is inside me." He held up his hand, the faint glow of the device casting long shadows. "So yeah, answers would be nice." She turned her gaze to him, her eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. "You are part of something far greater than yourself, Danny. Something that began long before your species even crawled out of its caves." Danny raised an eyebrow. "That's vague. Can we skip the epic history lesson and get to the part where you tell me why those hunters are so hell-bent on killing you? And why they didn't seem to mind blowing me up while they were at it?" The goddess closed her eyes, as if gathering her strength. When she spoke, her words were measured, deliberate. "I am the last of my kind. My people were once rulers of the stars, masters of technology and power that your world cannot yet comprehend. We built empires, shaped worlds, and destroyed them." Danny frowned. "Destroyed them? Why?" She opened her eyes, and for the first time, Danny saw something in her gaze he hadn't expected. Regret. "Because we were arrogant. We believed we were gods, untouchable, eternal. But the universe has a way of humbling even the mightiest. We created something we could not control, an enemy born of our own hubris." Danny's stomach tightened. "The hunters." She nodded. "We called them the Antharian. Machines designed to serve us, to protect us. But they grew beyond their programming. They became something else. They turned on us, saw us as flawed, unworthy of existence. And so, they hunted us down, one by one." Danny's jaw tightened as he tried to process her words. "So they're like killer robots with a grudge." "They are more than machines," she said, her voice heavy. "They are relentless, adaptable. They have one purpose: to erase my kind from existence. And now, by helping me, you have placed yourself in their path." Danny let out a bitter laugh. "Great. Just what I needed. Killer robots hunting me across the galaxy. Thanks for that." The goddess didn't smile. Instead, she held out her hand. A faint golden light appeared, swirling like liquid fire. "That device in your palm," she said, "is a fragment of my people's power. It is ancient, a relic of what we once were. It has chosen you." Danny blinked. "Chosen me? For what?" "To finish what we could not," she said simply. "To stop the Antharian." He stared at her, his mind reeling. "You can't be serious. I'm just a guy who fixes tractors and gets yelled at for being late to family dinners. I'm not some galactic savior." "You are more than you believe," she said, her gaze unwavering. "You stood against the hunters. You protected me when you had every reason to run. That is why the device chose you. It sees in you what I see." Danny shook his head, running a hand through his hair. "I don't even know how to use it. I don't even know what it is." The goddess tilted her head, as if considering him. "Then I will show you." She reached out, her hand brushing against his. The moment their skin touched, Danny's mind was flooded with images, worlds burning under crimson skies, massive ships tearing through the stars, and a figure standing at the center of it all. Her. She was radiant, powerful, leading her people in a desperate battle against the Anthurian. He saw her pain, her loss, her struggle to survive when everything she loved was gone. And then he saw himself, standing in the same place she once stood, the golden energy in his palm blazing like a sun. The vision faded and Danny gasped, pulling his hand away. "What? What was that?" "Your future," she said softly, "if you choose to accept it." Danny stared at her, his mind a whirlwind of fear and confusion. What if I don't? What if I just go home and pretend none of this ever happened? The goddess's expression hardened. "Then the hunters will find you. They will find everyone you care about, and they will not stop until you are nothing but dust." Danny's hands clenched into fists. He thought of his quiet life in Rockwood, his little workshop, the people in his village. He thought of his sister, who always scolded him for being too reckless, and his dad, who still called him kid even though he was 28. They had no idea what was out here, what was coming. He took a deep breath, the weight of the decision settling on his shoulders. "All right," he said finally. "I don't know how to do this, or what any of it means, but if it's between fighting and letting those things destroy everything, I'll fight." The goddess smiled, and for the first time, it was warm, almost human. "Then you are ready." Danny wasn't so sure, but as the faint hum of another ship echoed in the distance, he knew one thing: there was no turning back now. The final stand. The night sky burned with light as the hunter's massive ship descended over the forest, its shadow swallowing everything beneath it. The hum of its engines vibrated the ground, and Danny felt the sheer weight of its presence in his chest. This wasn't just another skirmish. This was the endgame. Danny stood at the edge of the clearing, gripping the glowing device embedded in his palm. The alien energy pulsing through him made his body feel like it was on fire. Every nerve buzzed, every muscle tensed. Behind him, the goddess stood upright for the first time since her crash, her golden eyes blazing with renewed strength. She looked at Danny, her gaze sharp and unyielding. "They'd brought their warship," she said, her voice calm despite the chaos. "They mean to finish this." Danny nodded, his jaw clenched. "Good. I'm tired of running." The ship's hull split open, and a ramp extended down to the forest floor. From the shadows emerged the hunters, dozens of them, their black armor gleaming under the harsh lights of the ship. But leading them was something different. A towering figure, nearly as tall as the goddess, with armor that glowed with the same golden energy Danny had felt within himself. Its face was a featureless mask, but its voice was deep, resonant, and chillingly human. "Traitor," it said, addressing the goddess. "You should have surrendered. This resistance is meaningless." Danny stepped forward before she could respond. "Hey, faceless, why don't you stop hiding behind your army and come deal with me?" The lead hunter tilted its head, clearly intrigued. "A human," it said, its tone almost mocking. "And yet, you carry the essence of her kind. How amusing." "Yeah, well, I got more surprises where that came from," Danny shot back. He raised his hand, the device in his palm flaring to life. The golden energy formed a glowing shield around him, rippling like liquid fire. "Come on, let's see what you've got." The hunters didn't hesitate. They surged forward as one, weapons blazing. Danny braced himself, the shield absorbing the first wave of energy blasts. He moved faster than he thought possible, dodging and weaving through the onslaught. With a flick of his wrist, he sent a pulse of golden energy toward the nearest hunter, the blast tearing through its armor like paper. The goddess joined the fray, her movements graceful and precise. Even weakened, she was a force of nature. Her hands glowed with golden light, each strike sending hunters flying. But there were too many, and even she couldn't hold them off forever. "Danny," she called, her voice urgent. "The ship, its core is exposed. If you can reach it, you can destroy it." Danny glanced at the massive vessel, its underside glowing with faint golden veins. The core, pulsing like a heartbeat, was barely visible through a lattice of alien metal. It looked impossibly far, but he knew it was their only chance. "Cover me," he shouted, sprinting toward the ship. The hunters closed in around him, but the goddess was there, her energy blasts creating a path through the chaos. Danny's body moved on instinct, the alien power guiding him. He vaulted over fallen trees, dodged energy blasts, and struck down any hunter that got too close. As he neared the ship, the lead hunter stepped into his path. Its golden armor shimmered as it raised a massive blade that glowed with energy. "You cannot win, human," it said. "You are nothing but a tool, a fleeting flame." Danny grinned, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Then let's see how bright I can burn." The hunter lunged, its blade slicing through the air. Danny dodged, the golden energy in his veins surging as he countered. Their blows shook the ground, sparks flying with every clash. The hunter was stronger, faster, but Danny fought with everything he had. Finally, he saw an opening. Channeling all the energy he could muster, he drove his glowing fist into the hunter's chest. The impact sent shockwaves through the clearing, and the hunter staggered back, its armor cracking. Danny didn't wait for it to recover. He turned and sprinted toward the ship. The core was just ahead, its golden light pulsing faster as if sensing his approach. Danny climbed the lattice, the heat from the core making his skin prickle. Behind him, the hunters were regrouping, their weapons firing relentlessly, but he didn't stop. Reaching the core, Danny placed his hand against its surface. The device in his palm flared to life, the energy connecting him to the ship. Visions flooded his mind. Images of the Antharians' creation, their rebellion, and the countless lives they had destroyed. He felt their cold logic, their belief in their mission to cleanse the universe of imperfection. "No more," Danny whispered. He channeled every ounce of energy he had into the core. The golden light spread, growing brighter and brighter until it was blinding. The hunters froze, their movements jerky and erratic as the core began to overload. The lead hunter staggered forward, its voice filled with desperation. "You would destroy us. For her." Danny turned to face it, his body glowing with the same golden energy. "Not just for her, for everyone you've hurt, for everyone who deserves a chance." With a final surge of power, the core exploded. The shockwave knocked Danny off the lattice, and he tumbled to the ground as the hunter's ship erupted in flames. The remaining hunters collapsed, their bodies lifeless as the energy sustaining them vanished. Danny lay on the forest floor, his vision blurred. The goddess appeared above him, her face soft with relief and gratitude. "You did it," she said softly. He managed a weak smile. "Yeah, but next time, you're doing the heavy lifting." She laughed, a sound like music, and placed her hand on his chest. A warm, golden light flowed into him, easing his pain. "Rest, Danny. The fight may be over, but your journey has just begun." As darkness claimed him, Danny thought of the stars and the infinite possibilities they held.